Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. I am so excited to see everyone who's already here this morning and so dedicated to celebrating financial literacy with us and just making this an awesome week. Thank you so much for making the time. My name is Blaine Cowart. I'm with Dallas Area Habitat for Humanity, and I am so excited to welcome you to our very first session of our virtual financial literacy week celebration this week. This is our first session of the week. If you haven't already browsed all of our sessions that we've got going on this week, we've got over a dozen sessions on all different topics, everything from financial foundations, like we'll talk about today, to investing, retirement, credit and debt, and of course, homeownership, and so much more. So without any further ado, these sessions are short and sweet. They're designed to be super accessible for you to be able to pop in. And by the way, if you are not able to join us live for any of these sessions, do know that these are all being recorded and will be available on our website on demand as well. So I'd like to introduce you to my co-host this morning, the fabulous Aretha Higgins. Hey, Aretha.
Hi, Blaine. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. And thank you all for joining us today. We're excited to have you.
We're so excited to be here, and we're really excited to talk about this incredibly important topic. You know, I think that for any women that are on this call today, we don't have to tell you why this topic matters, right? We know that women, when it comes to finances and women, the topics that we're going to dig into today are so incredibly important to understand why there are myths perpetuated out there and what we can do to actively debunk these myths. Because the truth of the matter is, women are good at managing our finances.
We rock.
You don't agree, Retha?
I certainly would. We are very good at managing our finances, our households, and anything else that we're challenged to do.
Absolutely. That's so right. And we're going to dig into some of that today too, you know, as it relates to kind of the different things that women are balancing in our lives. So I want to open us up today with just a couple of notes. You know, first of all, I think it's important to remember that, you know, while women, we've made significant strides when it comes to equality in finances, there is still a lot of work to be done, right? No doubt, we know that there's some consumer laws that are in place to protect us, right? Like Equal Credit Opportunity Act comes to mind. This is one of these laws that are in place to make sure that, you know, women, just like men, have equal credit access. And that's incredibly important. But we still know that, you know, many of the myths that exist in our society continue to, you know, perpetuate some of the stigma around women and money. And, you know, quite frankly, perpetuate some of the inequality that exists as well. So we thought that, you know, we'd open up today talking about 5 myths. Aretha and I are going to dig into 5 top myths when it comes to women and money. And we'll kick us off really talking about this fundamental idea that, you know, in 2021, you hear so many people saying, geez, it's 2021, y'all, like all things considered, when it comes to equality, like women and men and all things money are surely equal by now, right?
Right.
And to Aretha, right. Yeah. We would say, not quite, y'all, not quite. So, you know, let's just set the stage for a second, right? 40 years ago, I mean, that is in many of our lifetimes, right? Just 40 years ago, women were not allowed to apply for credit on our own. I mean, think about that for a second. We had to have a man co-sign for us, or we had to be co-signing with a man just to be able to access credit. And you think about how integral credit is to every part of our financial lives, right?
Right.
And just, you know, what would that, you know, in terms of how that holds you back and how that affects your financial life. And so that was just 40 years ago. So in those last 40 years, of course, we've made a lot of strides. You know, also back then, you know, let's remember women did not have property rights, right?
Yes.
And so we had to be, you know, married or benefiting from a relationship with a man to be able to, you know, have a bank account, have land, all of these things that allow us to tap into wealth building opportunities. So let's talk about one of the most systemic, representations of this myth that women and men are equal when it comes to all things money. We know this can't be true because in 2020, just last year, it was determined that the gender pay gap is just as wide as it's been in recent history, right? And some would argue, I will say, just a quick side note on this, with the pandemic, with COVID-19, Aretha, have you heard of this term that's been going around, the she session?
No, explain that to me.
So the concept behind the she session is like, this is the recession that has ensued as a result of COVID-19 is disproportionately affecting women, particularly women of color, right? And so as we think about like the mass exodus of women from the workplace, why? Because how many of us have kids at home that you're trying to juggle working from home, teaching your kids from home? It's just not always possible.
Right.
And so, a lot of women have had to, cut back on hours, reduce their pay, take part-time jobs, or just leave the workplace altogether to be able to care for their families.
That's so true, Blaine. I've heard of friends and family members who have said, look, this is just too much. I'm just going to have to step back at least for a few months to just try to, balance all of this and then maybe go back slowly, doing some work. Yeah.
No doubt. And so like it takes a problem that's already so bad when it comes to the gender pay gap and just exacerbates it. So let's just put some numbers behind this, right? In terms of the gender pay gap, for anyone who's not familiar, no, women do not get paid the same for men for the same work, unfortunately. Even though we are in 2021 and we have made significant strides, there's still a lot of work to be done. So to put some numbers behind this, in 2020, women were paid 82 cents on the dollar for every dollar that a man earned for the same work. 82 cents on the dollar. So let us know, by the way, chat Aretha and I in the chat box and let us know what y'all think about this. Would love to hear y'all's input and your feedback. But, let me just be clear about this too. 82 cents on the dollar for every dollar, that a man earns. But this is worse. The statistic is far worse for women of color. Okay, so for Black women specifically, that stat drops to 63 cents per dollar. Okay, and then for Latinas, Hispanic women, we're talking about 55 cents on the dollar. That's half, getting paid half the salary or earnings for the same amount of work. So, again, this is, some of the challenges that we're up against and, some of the myths that we're going to talk about today that Aretha and I will dig into, just perpetuate these myths and continue to make this gender pay gap a possibility in today's society. So just a couple of other things, that I want to add in here when it comes to why women and men are not yet equal when it comes to all things money. Aretha, have you ever heard of anything called the motherhood penalty?
Of course, yes.
As a mother, I imagine you have, right? And so motherhood penalty, of course, kind of like what we were just talking about with the she session concept, right? Which is this reality that as a working woman starts a family, and has children, a lot of times her salary decreases. Why? Because we're having to make accommodations. Mm-hmm. Family responsibilities still disproportionately fall on women, for right or for wrong, better or for worse. And so a lot of times we're having to either downshift our careers, think about taking time off of work, whatever that might look like, to be able to balance, our lives with taking care of our family. And so a lot of times we'll hear that's called in society the motherhood penalty. And by the way, I do want to point out that is not something experienced by fathers. In fact, and this blew my mind, working men who have families, who have children, tend to see on average a pay increase after having kids, Aretha.
Now, how does that happen?
Please teach us your ways, right? I women shouldering a lot of that work at home. And so, I suppose if you're able to, maintain status quo, then you can, upshift your career. And that's great for those who are in a position to do so, but just not the reality for a lot of working mothers.
Right.
And then I also want to point out this other quick statistic as well, that I know you're going to love as a homeownership counselor, Aretha, which is the student loan gap.
Oh.
So did you know women make up only 56% of total college students, but they carry over 65% of the outstanding student loan debt? And specifically, again, when we talk about not just women, but women of color, Black women carry the highest student loan debt amount than any other group in the US.
Wow.
And so just thinking about kind of, in your role, of course, Aretha, as a homeownership counselor and helping women, all families, but a lot of women, Habitat serves a lot of single female heads of households, and thinking about how that can hold us back from homeownership. I mean, that really has a big effect.
Yes, it does. And I can truly see how that happens, because women in general, we're very caring, we're very giving. And so when our children tend to go off to college, guess what? We want to help them. So
Yeah.
we're willing to take out those loans for them to get their education. So I can certainly see how we would have more of the, have more of the student loan debt. Yes.
No doubt. Yeah, no doubt. So that's myth number one. So let's bust this myth that all things are not equal. There is work to be done, and all of us can play a part in that. Aretha, I'm going to turn it over to you for the second myth.
Okay. All right. We're going to talk about the second myth here, which is women spend frivolously. How dare they? How did this come about to say that we are not serious or sensible about how we spend our money? Yes, I can admit that there are some things that we like, to spend our money on. Shopping. We love to get our hair done. We like to look pretty. But that doesn't mean that we don't value what we spend our money on. In society, they just love to perpetuate this myth. How we love to spend our money shopping, traveling, buying shoes, buying lattes, and just throwing our money different places. But the truth is that men, they spend money frivolously. They do a lot of things they spend a lot of money on things. Women tend to spend more, like I said, on clothes and things of that nature. But men, they spend more on things like takeout, alcohol, and those big ticket items like cars and electronics. And there have been studies that have shown that overall, single men spend slightly more than women. And that's according to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. So it's just amazing to me that how we've come to that myth. Yes, in general, women and men both, tend to spend money. But on average, it's the things that you're spending the money on. Okay.
So true.
Yeah. And surveys have also found that women prioritize their savings and debt reduction way more than men do. Okay. So saving is very important to us. Our financial well-being is one of the top priorities for women. The Vanguard study shows that women are the ones signing up for the 401k plans, and they're saving a larger piece of their salaries compared to men. So kudos to us. We have done this. Yes.
Shout out to the girls who are prioritizing this, right?
Yes.
To your point, Lisa. I mean, spending money is one thing, but really thinking about how we are spending money wisely. That's really what it comes down to.
Right. We're just more conservative, and before we spend, we tend to think about what we're spending on.
Yes. Yeah. I think, again, our reference point at Habitat, is through the homeownership counseling work that we do one-on-one with clients who are preparing for homeownership, right? And I think, from my perspective, Aretha, this very much rings true with what we see. I mean, think about how many couples that we work with, and a lot of times we see, the woman really driving that conversation home, like, hey, we're not here to play around, right? Like,
Exactly.
let's take a hard look at our budget, where are we spending money, and we need to, get this in order so we can make homeownership a reality.
Yes, and I can say that in the counseling sessions when I'm with when it's a couple, the man is the one that you have to convince when you're looking at that budget. Okay, do you see anywhere where you can reduce some things? Yeah, I need the cable. I don't know about cutting down on the sports channel.
Right.
It's hard for them. Whereas that woman says, okay, my goal is to get into this house, so yes, we can cut it. We can cut it all together for a few months.
I love it.
Yeah. So
Okay,
this,
let's talk about myth number 3, which I think goes hand in hand with myth number 2 that we just talked about, right? Myth 2 is that we spend money frivolously. Myth number 3 that we're going to debunk today is that women are bad at money. Okay, dun dun dun. We're not. Okay, let's be clear about this. So first of all, I think all of us as women, I think it's fair to say, all of us, or most of us anyway, have heard this myth growing up to some extent. Nowadays things are a little different, right? Because there's this big emphasis on STEM in schools. But for many of us, I would say, probably mid-20s above, that wasn't the case, right? And a lot of times we hear this myth that like women are better at like reading and writing, and boys or men are better at math, and these types of concepts. And so, even though that may not be true, and it isn't true, but hearing that myth over and over and over again does something to kind of our own confidence, our own level of confidence in our ability to manage money.
right. And not just hearing it, Blaine.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we see it too. And I don't know how many women online can agree with me, but growing up in school, all my math teachers, everyone I encountered was a man.
Yes. And representation matters. To your point, Aretha, that really does matter. When you see women that are in these fields that you can aspire to, that's a game changer, right? That's a game changer. And I will say, quick shameless plug on this, but for real, we have 2 amazing influencers who are joining us as our keynote speakers this week. Okay. And these are women of color. Okay. Representation matters. And these 2 women have made enormous amounts of money on their own, y'all. And just hearing their stories has so inspired us at Habitat to say other women need to hear this, right? Not just women. It's important that men hear this as well, but because representation matters, we need to get this word out and help people know they did it, you can do it too.
Right.
To your point earlier, Aretha, you mentioned something related to the statistic, right? And I have a similar statistic on this. 70% of women report that they actively invest for their future. So that might be through homeownership. It might be through like 401ks or planning for their retirement. It might be even dabbling in stocks and stock trading, but some sort of investing for their future, right? So cannot be possible that we are bad at math, right? But we are also planning for our future. And by the way, when we talk about investing, which we're going to get to on Wednesday, investing is about not how we just take our money and stow it away. Investing is about how we take our money and we grow that money. A lot of times without a lot of action on our end. So if you ask me, that is smart money management. That is thinking about how I make something, how I make a lot out of a little, right? That's using our brains.
Yes.
And, I think, again, you mentioned a little bit about this earlier too, Aretha, but I think on the whole, and again, we know this to be true in our lived experience, in our real life experience at Habitat, but women tend to be overall more conservative fiscally when it comes to managing our money than men are. We tend to be more risk averse. And that tends to benefit us over the long term when we think about achieving our financial goals as well. So in fact, women investors tend to just slightly outperform men. Not that anyone's keeping tabs, but we're keeping tabs, right? We need to know these things.
Yes, and just taking control over your finances is just as easy as knowing how to add, how to subtract, how to multiply, how to divide.
Yes, that's exactly right. And these days, quite frankly, using online tools.
Exactly.
If you are tech savvy, girl, you got this. You figure it out, is what we would say. Okay, Aretha, what's our 4th myth?
Okay, our fourth myth, and you know how I'm feeling about this one. Women need a man or significant other in order to buy a house or other types of big purchases.
Mm.
Simply not true.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a huge myth, everyone. Did you all know that 18% of first time home buyers are single women? And by contrast, only 8% are single men? We are doing the thing here.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and studies have been shown that single women own more homes than men. And according to the National Association of Realtors, single women accounted for nearly 20% of home purchases in 2019. And
Wow.
that number is growing higher and higher. Okay,
20%.
20%. This was in 2019.
And
Okay.
that's just single women. That's not even including, like married women, women in a relationship, right? So, I mean, you think about how that really moves the needle for women on the whole. That's unbelievable.
Yes. And it's just that women are excelling in their careers, they're getting married and having children later, and they're just determined to reach their goals of whatever that is, home ownership, building up a nice nest egg for themselves. They're not going to wait on, we're not waiting on men. We're not waiting until we get married to do these things.
Right.
I mean, we're wanting to invest in our future as well. So
Yeah.
why do we have to wait until we're married to do that? So this statement is truly not, it's not true at all. Okay.
And again, with our habitat hat on, right?
Yes.
Nearly 70% of habitat homeowners, so people who actually buy habitat homes, not who necessarily just come through counseling, but we're talking about like made it all the way across the finish line, y'all. 70% of our habitat homeowners here in Dallas are women head of households, single women head of households.
Every day.
So I mean, like that, the proof's in the pudding, right? Like this is totally a possibility. And don't count yourself out. If you're sitting there saying, like, I don't know if I make enough money on my own. Again, it's all about what you're doing with that money. It's not about where we're at, it's about where we're going. Right.
Exactly. Exactly. So I just want to say to all the women out there, you can do this. These studies are not wrong. We also have a report from Tree that found that single women own more than 1.5 million more homes than single men do in America's 50 largest metro cities. So women are on top of their financial game. Do you all hear me out there? Okay.
If you hear Aretha in preaching her sermon today to say, go girl, you got this. I love that. And Aretha too, like you think about specifically how important homeownership is in terms of building generational wealth. So again, women tend to be more family oriented, just terms of, not just in terms of our finances, but just in general, right? So when you think about wanting to leave something for your kids, leave them a better life, then maybe, you entered adulthood in when it comes to your finances or whatever else, like this is the way to do it through home ownership for sure.
Exactly. Number one way to build wealth.
That's it right there. That's it. And I mean, make it, make yourself one of the 5 women, one of the 5 single women, if that's you out there, right? Thinking about home ownership, make yourself part of that, or better yet, let's move the needle, right? Let's move it a little further. So here's our last myth. Myth number 5 is that men are better business leaders than women. Okay. I take personal issue with this. But the truth of the matter is that's false. We are debunking this myth today because although I will say, without a doubt, women do face disproportionate obstacles when it comes to really, developing into leadership roles. And then there's this other whole concept too that you might have heard about when it comes to women in business, which is the glass cliff. And what that means is, like we think about like the glass ceiling a lot, right? About like, shattering that glass ceiling and moving up through the ranks. The glass cliff concept is about, okay, you've made it to the top. You're in a leadership position. But then what? And are you set up for success in that leadership position? Do you have peers around you, including the men, around you who are supporting you as a woman in the workplace and amplifying your voice, right? And amplifying your message and really being an ally for you in the workplace. And that's really what it boils down to. And a lot of women find themselves able to secure that position at the top, but they don't have that kind of lateral support that's needed to really succeed at the top. And so a lot of times we're not set up for success. So, but that being said, thinking about, a quick statistic, for instance, like only 8% of Fortune 500 execs, like specifically CEOs, are women. Only 8%, y'all. So there's a lot of work to be done there. And that number is way down again for women of color, right? But the data shows that women in business, women leaders tend to produce better financial results. And again, a lot of this comes down to being more conservative with money in general, but also we tend to be more empathetic leaders, right? And quite honestly, if you ask me, I think our workplace needs more of that, especially with COVID.
Yes, Blaine, I totally agree. Empathy can go a long way, especially with running a business,
Oh yeah, for sure. Okay, any other myths, to the audience? I will say we have a couple of minutes left that we're going to be live this morning. If you have, questions or comments or myths that you've heard, shoot those to us in the chat box. We want to hear from you. And, I'm also curious if you have any comments about or ideas or suggestions about how all of us women can help in our own way to break down some of these stereotypes. And part of it, I think, is just like we were talking about earlier, Rita, like just showing up as a woman when it comes to like the financial space.
Yes. And also just continuing to educate yourself around the financial market. If you're interested in investing, get into a class, that's speaking on that. So you can learn more about it and invest for you and your family and move that needle on up higher.
I love it. Oh, Patty's here. Hey, Patty. I know Patty. She's here from Habitat Hillsboro. Hey, we love Habitat. No matter where you are, we love Habitat. Yeah, Patty said she really enjoyed the presentation. That's so sweet. I want to remind everyone too, if there's no questions or comments, just a reminder that we are doing sessions like this all day, every day this week. Okay, so at 10 a.m., at noon, and then again in the evenings, we've got something going on every single day. Every day has a theme. And our next live session will be today at noon. Aretha's going to be back and she's going to be hosting this session, which we're so excited about, with our partners over at Harmony CDC. If you're not familiar with Harmony, they are a nonprofit here run through Concord Church. They do amazing work in our community, and they have a financial coaching team. Their financial coaches are going to be here to talk with Aretha, our senior homeownership counselor. So you're going to have a table full of women experts today to talk about maximizing your finances and building financial resilience. And again, this topic is all about like, you don't have to have a lot of money to be able to succeed financially. So we're here to equip you with that. Yes. Super excited to see some smiling faces in that session as well. And then tonight at 6 p.m., we've got a budgeting workshop, a live budgeting workshop with our partners over at BBVA. We're bringing Audrina, who is fabulous. And I promise you, if you have not heard Audrina present, you want to attend that session. It's going to be a ton of fun.
Yes, definitely. We are so excited. And again, remember, education is the key. So we want to see you at these classes, okay? Again, if you can't watch them live, be sure to watch the recorded ones. All right. Thank you so much.
Aretha, so good to talk to you today. Thank you for taking a few minutes to chat.
Same here, Blaine. It's been a blast. I'm just, I'm excited to share the knowledge. So again, thank you for having us.
Yeah. And I will just make a quick note. We got a note in the chat that I wanted to just address to the entire group. The question was, if you're participating in the sessions this week, can you apply for homeownership through Dallas Habitat? And the answer is, you can always apply for homeownership through Dallas Habitat. Yes, absolutely. If you're interested in applying for the Habitat homeownership program, your first step should be to visit our website. We will drop that in the chat, dallasareahabitat.org. Visit our website, go to the homeownership section. It'll walk you through the first steps of how to get started. You can pre-screen yourself for our program online. And if you are a good fit, you can apply immediately online. So there's no reason to delay. And on Friday, we're going to talk about all things home ownership. Of course, we'll be back, our team, and we're bringing some experts along with us for the ride. So if you're interested in home ownership, be sure to join us on Friday as well. Awesome. Thanks so much. Good to see you, Aretha. We'll see you in just an hour and a half.
All right. See you all then.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye.